Welcome to Gut Check Radio. I'm Nick Belden, a chiropractic physician and functional medicine practitioner. The information provided in this podcast is for educational entertainment purposes only and is not intended to diagnose, cure, or treat any disease, and do not apply any of the information you hear without first speaking with your physician.
All right, so let's give some helpful tips. What are some potential antidotes to these 4 forms of stress? Well, I just talked about this one, to release control of the output. I have this expression as a Christian, as a strong man in my faith. I've had this little mantra to myself of, hey, you control the input, let God control the outputs. And to me, that's been very freeing to know that I can change my effort, my intensity, my input into situations. And I don't need to worry. I don't need to fret because God's got the output. God's got the output under control. So if you release control of the output, and you see this with people all the time, people that are goal-oriented, they only care about the output. Society rewards them because maybe they do well in academics, athletics, or other various achievements. But what happens when they don't hit that goal? We've all known the stories of people who had great potential, who missed a goal or who didn't win a particular event, and then they absolutely spiraled because they felt like they needed to have such control of the output that they lost control over their own inputs. And then again, it's the inputs, it's being that systems and process oriented. It's the guy who loves to fish rather than the guy who loves to catch the fish. You just love the process of getting better. To me, that's very synonymous with releasing control of the output. Dictate the input, you have control over that, but the output will fall where it falls. I'm very fortunate that I have a lot of peace in that decision, but I did not for a very long time, and it's still something that I struggle with. But just begin to think about that in your mind, of that the output is outside of your control. So whether it's a health environment, whether it's you go into a restaurant and when ingredients are used, that's sort of out of your control. But what is in control is your internal response to the external factor. Exactly what I just said. Take control of the input. Take control of your mind. Say you're at a restaurant and you're fearful that they might put a particular ingredient or a vegetable oil or added sugar. That fear, that feeling of threat is coming from within. So that fear is keeping you in this box. But if you sort of start to train your mind into thinking, hey, I was made brilliantly resilient in the image of God and the image of Christ. And because of that, I can probably handle dang near any food. I've even heard stories of people with anaphylactic reactions to food previously who, through mental and brain healing and brain retraining, have been able to reintroduce foods they've previously been allergic to. I'm not even talking sensitivity. I'm talking true allergy. That's fascinating. And that tells you the power the mind can have. And the beauty of the mind is we control that. We have control over our mind's input into the external environment. So if you're at a restaurant, don't focus on the food ingredients. Focus on eating with loved ones, eating with family, smile, laugh, speak with your hands, look people directly in the eye. All these things that activate, it's called our social engagement system. That's shout out to polyvagal theory. If you've never read that book, fascinating book. It sort of breaks free from this idea of parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. There's actually a different state of the parasympathetic system, and there's a couple states of the vagus nerve. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. Anyways, take control of the input and release control of the output. Number 3, understand the situation will improve, aka time heals. I'm sure all of us out there have heard that phrase. I remember hearing it for the first time when you would get in a fight with a friend, as a childhood friend, and I remember my parents would say, hey, you know what, time heals. And they were right. I mean, it's crazy how when you're 11 and you get in a fight with one of your friends, and then maybe 6 weeks go by and you're completely hanging out, maybe sometimes even 6 days at that age, because it's just, you allow time, you allow space, you allow time and space for your nervous system to understand, hey, like that situation, that really wasn't threatening to me. I love this person. I enjoy hanging out with this person. And we have the same goal here. So, and even take it to the modern, if you have food sensitivities, if you have debilitating fatigue, if you think your symptoms won't change, then they probably won't. So you need to have the belief. Again, look up the milkshake study if you want to see actual physiological and scientific proof of the belief effect. Look up the milkshake study. It's fascinating. It's done out of Stanford. But you need to understand, you need to believe that time will heal. You need to believe that your situation will improve. You need to have hope that your situation will improve. I saw something somewhere that says hope is not a strategy. I think that's BS. Hope is a fantastic strategy. I think hope is probably one of the only strategies we truly have. Understand your situation will improve and that time will heal. You need to believe that. That's a prerequisite. Number 4, a potential antidote to these stressors is to rationalize it. So use that prefrontal cortex, that God-given prefrontal cortex for logic and critical thinking and for reason. And I'll use an example of myself. When I was at my probably most anxious of flying, I either read this or someone told me about it. Like, hey, you ever look at the stats in flying? And I was like, no. And they didn't tell me them, which was actually, I'm glad they didn't. They said, go look it up. Because once you see it, it's truth for you. If you just hear it from someone else, you're like, yeah, I don't know. But if you hear it, if you go read it, then it's truth. So I went and I looked it up, and I remember reading that statistically, I should remember the exact number, but it was an astronomical amount more safe to fly than it was to drive. And then I remember thinking, why am I so anxious of flying when I only do it 3 to 5 times a year and I drive 3 to 5 times a day? That's completely irrational when I understand that I'm actually safer in a plane than I am a car. Yet I continue to get in a car 3 to 5 times a day. That has always been my thing whenever someone says they have trust issues. I'm like, really? You have trust issues? Do you trust that someone else is going to stop at a red light? You do, or else you wouldn't get in your car. So sorry if I offended anyone out there who feels that they have trust issues. Those are real in the context of relationships, but really in life, you have to have some aspect of trust because you trust you're going to be safe when you walk out of your front door. Some people don't, and that's a pretty debilitating condition. But rationalization. So whether that's, if you I remember looking up this once, the stats on anaphylactic reactions is like 0.003% of people. It's incredibly small. So sometimes looking up numbers, being more informed, sometimes, from my experience, being informed is probably the least effective, but it can be helpful. Number 5, potential antidote, faith. And this builds off the third point of understanding the situation will improve or having belief that time will heal, is without faith, what do we have? And I'm not going to get into, I'm not a theologian, I'm not a scholar, I'm not a pastor. I just work with people in their health and wellness one-on-one for a living. And I see it, what happens when people lose faith. I have a question on our intake form that says, do you believe your body will heal? And essentially what I'm asking is, do you have faith? And most people say yes. And because most people say yes, most people long-term are going to be okay. I've had a couple people, and they stick out to my mind, and I pray and I feel for them every day, who said no. That they didn't believe their body could heal. And they didn't have faith. And I have a lot of compassion for these people, because when you lose faith in your body's ability to heal, when you lose faith in general, what more do you have? If you don't have faith, what are we reduced to? We're reduced almost to an animal and to just someone who just eats, sleeps. It's almost a child. Like a child doesn't necessarily, it's funny when you think about when do we start to develop the need to have faith. I imagine when you're 3 months old, you might have faith. Again, it's weird to think that a 3-year-old will never know, or 3-month-old will never know what it's like to be 3 months old, because a 3-month-old can't articulate. Well, also, here's a fun fact. No one will ever know what it's like to be born. Why? Because a newborn can't articulate, yeah, this is what it was like in the womb for however many weeks. This is what it was like to come out of the vaginal canal, hopefully. And this is what it was like to try breast milk for the first time. No one will be able to articulate that, which is crazy. That's a sidebar. But when these people would answer our questionnaire and say they didn't believe their body can heal, I felt for them. And it was almost, at that point, it was a non-negotiable that I don't know if I can help them. I don't know if I can help them until they believe that they can heal. I can try and instill belief in them, but until it clicks in them, until it's truth for them, it will never be truth. So you have to have faith that your situation can improve, that it can heal. And if nothing else, have that. And then once you have faith, all these other things, whether it's understanding that time is going to heal, understanding that you can control the output or the input, and then the output will fall where it falls, understanding that numbers can be helpful and rationalization is helpful, all stem from the most foundational one, which is why I put it on the bottom, that faith in healing, faith in your body. You were made by our Creator, by God, to be so resilient and so capable of healing, and have faith in your body to be able to break free from food sensitivities, chemical sensitivities, fatigue, insomnia, brain fog, constipation. Have faith in your body and in your abilities and in your mind that you can heal from this situation.